It's now time for Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. It began as a podcast, went live on the net, and transformed into a full-blown empire. It's the only daily boxing talk show on the planet, hosted by the only guy with the balls to do it. Many have stepped into the ring. Many have tried to take the belt. And one by one, they've fallen. Another victim of the undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. Talkin' Boxing with Billy C is on now.
My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're listening, whatever you're doing. I hope you're doing okay. Today's show is being brought to us in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located on St. Simon's Island in Georgia. Check out the website, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or give my man a call, 912-268-2328. 912-268-2328. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold, and you can get a copy of this book right now while you're watching or listening to this show. Just visit BarnesandNoble.com or Amazon.com. You want a signed copy? Don't worry about it. Visit our website, BillyCBoxing.com, and click on the book. We got a busy show scheduled for you today. Lots of stuff to talk about in the news. We got Jeffrey Sussman scheduled to join us. He just put out a book about Rocky Graziano. We'll get him a little bit later. We got a bunch of emails I didn't get to yesterday that we'll get to today. Some fights that had taken place, a decent fight tonight. And then Sunday morning, we got a fight that we're going to give our predictions, breakdowns, all of that happy stuff. But first, let's get started right away. Yesterday's main topic was the offer that Team Anthony Joshua made to Deontay Wilder to have the fight take place. It was $12.5 million. According to multiple reports, Team Wilder has said that the offer of $12.5 million plus a rematch is an insult. Keeping in mind that Wilder, his advisors / managers / promoters, Al Heyman, Shelley Finkel, Lou DiBella, all are saying that it was an insult of an offer, despite being $10 million more than his previous highest paid fight. Joining me right now, Sal Rocky Senecola. What's your thoughts on the reports that your boy has refused the offer?
Again, I like to hear this and see this from the horse's mouth. But no, you know what? I would be very disappointed because, first of all, to make this fight happen, it takes two parties willing to get in the ring, of course. And, that should be the goal, the focal point of where they want to get to dance with each other. And the bottom line is $12 million, $12.5 million really should not be looked at as an insult, considering it's over $10 million more than what he has earned in previous fights. Second of all, like I said, Deontay, backload the contract where everything's going to be in your favor should you win. And you can make this sound like, hey, guess what? Anthony Joshua's got to get the most now because this is the biggest and the last time he's going to have a big purse like this because you're going to dethrone him and you're going to own him. The bottom line is, take the offer. 12.5 to have a unification of the heavyweight championship of the world. And, like I said, you'll have a rematch clause. You bring it back to the U.S., and you'll be the guy in the driver's seat if you should beat him. And if not, you'll still be in great contention. You'll still be on top of the game. You'll still have a benchmark reestablished, maybe not 12.5 million, but maybe several more million than what you have right now.
Well, the more I was thinking about this yesterday, and I personally think that the $12.5 million alleged offer was more than reasonable. I really thought so. But I did give it some more thought, and I said to myself, maybe a percentage split does make the most sense. There's rumors that this fight could generate as much as $100 million. I would think it could. And with that said, 12.5 could be very low. I think that the magnitude of this fight, and for the reasons that this fight is taking place, not only to unify the creme de la creme division in the sport of boxing, but the sport itself. On the one hand, dollars and cents, 12.5 million, $10 million more than a guy has ever made before. And considering if he doesn't take that, how many fights would it take for him to make 12.5 million? At least 4 or 5 fights, even if he's fighting slugs. On the onset, it looks like it's a no-brainer. But in the large picture, maybe a percentage split is more reasonable. In my opinion, there's no way it should be a 50-50 split, but a 60-40 split, Anthony Joshua getting 60% is more realistic. That's my thoughts. Showtime, they want to add to it. They want to help negotiations. Steve Espinosa, who's a pretty shady-looking character. I don't know him personally, but he, just judging a book by its cover, he looks kind of shady. People have said he is. He says, and I quote, "We have vested interest in both guys. We feel attached to each of them. If we can help mediate, we will. We've offered that. We're a key element of this negotiation. If we can grease the wheels in terms of getting a deal done attractively to everyone, then we'll do our best. I have no doubt that this fight will happen. It could be the next fight, it could be the second fight, or it could be in the spring of 2019, just like Billy C. said. I don't think we'll see a drawn-out negotiation because I see 2 fighters anxious to stage a worldwide mega fight." But meanwhile, Sal, back at the offices of the worst sanctioning body in the sport of boxing, the WBA, they have stepped on the gas pedal, ordering the Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Povetkin fight. We talked about that earlier this week. They've upped the ante. They are saying that they have 30 days as of April 5th to come to an agreement before they go to purse bid. So I would think that this fight, meaning Deontay Wilder against Anthony Joshua, better be signed pretty quickly, because the last thing that I would think that Team Joshua would want is a Povetkin fight to go to purse bid, because then that Russian lunatic of a promoter will outbid everybody and stage that fight in Russia. And we all know what kind of crazy things happen when fights are staged in Russia. What do you think?
Well, I think, like I said, Bill, the big fight that everybody wants to see is the one that we're talking about right now, and that is Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua, and for the Unification Heavyweight Championship of the world. That's the only fight I really care to see in the heavyweight division. And what the other offerings and everything else, yeah, you know what? When you look at the big picture, I think the 12.5 in the realm of maybe a fight generating $100 million. Maybe it could be some kind of split on a pay-per-view level or something else there. And I think 60-40 is very fair for Anthony Joshua to get the 60% and Deontay Wilder get the 40%. And that would generate a lot of revenue for both fighters anyway. So, there is some wiggle room there, and I think that Anthony Joshua should be a little more receptive to that. But I think the 12.5 guaranteed base is not an insult in that sense. I think the percentage of the revenue generated from pay-per-views and everything else could sweeten the deal. I mean, the original offer was basically the alleged original offer was 7.5 million or 7 million plus the U.S. or all the pay-per-views for Deontay Wilder. That could have been an interesting scenario for him too. So I think there'll be a lot of people wanting to see this fight. I think it'll generate a lot of money pay-per-view, and I think that would be a fair share if they can negotiate a percentage split out of that. And I don't want to see the Povetkin fight. Got to sign, seal, and deliver this fight ASAP.
Have you ever seen
say within 2 weeks.
Have you ever seen Povetkin fight?
No.
Okay. Just to add to this, Anthony Joshua. Now we know that the time difference is I think 5 or 6 hours right now. But my man Johnston, who has a column up on BillyCBoxing.com, gave me an update this morning just before we came on air, and Joshua made some comments about the fight with Deontay Wilder. All of a sudden, I believe that Anthony Joshua and his team are really trying hard to make this fight so that they don't have to fight Povetkin. I think that if they have this fight signed, sealed, and delivered, then there's some wiggle room with the WBA and Povetkin, I would think. Otherwise, I think that the WBA would risk losing all credibility. And Joshua, some quotes from Joshua today. He says, if it's a $100 million fight, and they are happy with taking 60-40, and I've been saying 60-40 for a long time, but rumor has it that Team Wilder has said publicly that they would take a 60-40 split, which is, I think that's a reasonable split. I really do.
I think it's a reasonable split.
Yeah, regardless of the money. But listen to this quote, Sal. Anthony Joshua says, if it is a $100 million fight and they're happy taking a 60-40 split, I'll take 50-50. Give me $50 million up front, and I swear I'll sign to fight that. I'll sign to fight tomorrow. In other words, what Anthony Joshua is saying is, people could say how much you want. If you give AJ $50 million, he'll sign and take the fight now. Which I think puts it in perspective. Because just because a fight might generate $100 million doesn't mean it profits $100 million. But anyway, he says they're not making offers like that, but they are talking about it. So it's not real. We've offered them a lucrative deal, and we're just waiting to hear if he's serious or not. In other words, they're saying, hey, dude, put up your money, put the money up. You guys want to have the fight? You give me $50 million, I'll fight tomorrow. That Anthony Joshua is making it real, and the real part of it is the fact that Deontay Wilder doesn't have a team that could put the fight on. That's the truth, Sal. That's 100% the truth. He says, and this is true too. Let me get this and get your thoughts. He says they like to jump on social media rather than email us back in a professional manner. I don't understand where they're coming from. Nevertheless, there's many heavyweights out there that are serious to fight. When he was asked about if he expects the fight to really happen, he says it has to happen. There's not really been many fights in the heavyweight division in history that haven't happened when you're talking about this level, this championship level. In terms of history, I think that this fight has to happen because it would be great for this era of the sport of boxing. And if it doesn't happen, it's a shame. What's your thoughts?
I like that, and I agree with it because, the bottom line is I think the sport of boxing could benefit from this type of fight, this mega fight, and it could use it right now. And I think that, we'll be able to ride on this one for a while and open up the door for other big fights. We hear all the rhetoric, all these hypotheticals, all the intangibles. Well, let's make this tangible. Let's look at it and put it all in perspective, and let's get this fight underway, and let's get the negotiations to be on a realistic level, and let's let these guys come and meet each other to dance. And I think that is the goal. That's what should be drummed out, and that's what should be iced and surely clarified and done, hopefully in a week or two. It's got to be. I think they should. I think they have a reasonable foundation where they can carve out the percentages, the gate, this and that, and everything else, and come up with a solution. And that's what I really think they should be doing, sitting down at the bargaining table and making this fight happen for the fans that want to pay for it. And that's it.
Some other news in the heavyweight division. It was reported yesterday, signed, sealed, and delivered officially. Frank Warren signed Tyson Fury, and they have his comeback date all set. It's taking place June 9th at the Manchester Arena. They are having, if it's not taking place now, they are having a press conference to officially announce it right now, today, in England. If you guys forgot, Tyson Fury has been out of the ring for over 2.5 years. His last fight was actually his upset victory over Vladimir Klitschko back in November of 2015. Tyson Fury is undefeated at 29 years old. He's still young. 25-0 with 18 knockouts. There's no secret to the fact that he's been calling out Anthony Joshua. And Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury in England would be a huge fight. You know, once again, the options are wide open for Anthony Joshua. And Deontay Wilder is in a must-face Anthony Joshua situation, in my opinion, because the other opportunities for Deontay Wilder are not going to be as lucrative financially. You know, the greed factor has to be put aside here. You have to look at what's being offered to fight AJ, and then look at it realistically. How many fights would it take to get to that number, et cetera, et cetera? And like Sal just said, worry about the rematch. Backload the rematch. If everybody's so confident on Team Wilder that he's going to beat AJ, then make the fight happen. Deontay Wilder's been shooting off his mouth for the last 1.5 years, 2 years. Pounding his chest, saying he's the best, saying nobody wants to fight him, everybody's ducking him, all this crap. And he's got it in his lap. And if he doesn't take this fight, let me tell you something. Forget about the money. Forget about everything. It's going to make Deontay Wilder look exactly what he is, a loudmouth. He's got to back it up in the ring. Now, as far as Tyson Fury is concerned, June 9th, it hasn't been officially announced. Maybe they'll announce it today. But the guy that's been being discussed about stepping in the ring with him is Shannon Briggs. Shannon Briggs is 60 wins, 6 losses, and a draw. He is 46 years old, and he didn't fight since his last fight was in May. He had gotten popped. He was supposed to fight Lucas Brown. He had gotten popped for steroid use and was charged with a 2-year ban from performing. So that's obviously up. So we'll see what happens with that. So that's what's going on in heavyweight news. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, so we're going to try to move on fast. You have a comment about that, Sal?
I was going to just say, I wonder if Canelo Alvarez heard that comment about the Briggs being banned for 2 years for steroid use, number one. Number two, let Tyson Fury come back against Povetkin. There you go. See, once the fighter goes with steroids or some kind of juice or is accused of this or that or there's founded evidence of that nature, I really don't pay much attention to those fighters.
Yeah, well, you watch Canelo is going to end up getting, a slap on the wrist. He'll be able to fight in September. And speaking of Canelo, Triple G is running into some trouble. The old muscle move took place yesterday. Gary Spike O'Sullivan, which apparently was the guy that was most likely to face Triple G. He was a known commodity, had fought on HBO. Apparently, they have pulled out of the fight. What has happened in the last 48 hours is Triple G and his team and HBO have made what I think is the right move by pulling that fight off of HBO pay-per-view and have made that on regular HBO. Now, as a result of that, HBO's boxing budget has been slashed the last couple of years, and their biggest fights where they can make some money is on pay-per-view, of course. But by moving it to HBO, it kind of hurts them financially. So therefore, according to multiple reports, the money offer to Gary Spike O'Sullivan was a lot less than it would have been if the fight was on pay-per-view, which doesn't really make sense because that fight I don't think would have generated big pay-per-view numbers to begin with. But keep in mind, Gary Spike O'Sullivan is signed with Golden Boy. They turned down the offer that was laid out to him. So now Triple G is looking at the possibility of facing Sergey Deverenchenko. Now, Sergey Deverenchenko is a mandatory for the IBF belt that Triple G has, and the WBC belt that he has Canelo was the mandatory. Billy Joe Saunders has the other belt, but they can't fight until June. And then Demetrius Andrade apparently, I don't know if Triple G's team doesn't want to fight him, or if the money hasn't been enough for Team Andrade. I don't know, but it's starting to get messy, Sal. And it seems to me that fighting on May 5th might not be the smartest move for Triple G. I said this weeks ago. I think the smart move would have been for him to go fight Billy Joe Saunders in June. What's your thoughts?
Well, Billy Joe Saunders, I'm going to say this. I'm almost getting the feeling that maybe Triple G's camp doesn't want that Billy Joe Saunders fight to happen right now or in June. And I'll tell you, not for any reason other than, okay, he was focused on Canelo Alvarez for May 5th. And, you know, there's a lot to be said about that. When a fighter has somebody in mind he's training for, it's his incentive. He has his picture on the wall. He's looking at him. He's training for him. He's going against his style. Then all of a sudden it doesn't happen. You know, it's a whole kind of roller coaster where, okay, now I got to get emotionally charged and up for this fight and this and that. And I think Spike O'Sullivan made a mistake by maybe not going through with this fight because he's an action-packed fighter. He's a dangerous fighter. He could have pulled an upset, or he could have at least had a great showing against Triple G, which would have propelled him up. I mean, basically, he's not a household name just yet, Spike O'Sullivan, but having an HBO platform and having sure, maybe the purse wasn't going to be quite as much as it was on a pay-per-view, but still, you have an HBO in your living room platform, and against one of the most feared middleweights in the world today, and all eyes are going to be on you. I think it would have been a great opportunity for Spike O'Sullivan to get in a ring there with Triple G. And I think maybe now they should pull the whole damn plug and start from scratch and see what's going on with the negotiation process on the table.
Well, it all boils down to money, and to be honest with you, the truth of the matter is that we got a situation here where Triple G is in a rough spot. Canelo cheated, and now Triple G is paying the price. I don't understand that. It's stupid. Do you think that he's being held hostage here?
Triple G?
Yeah.
I don't think he's being held hostage. I think maybe the powers that may be are still deciding what Canelo's fate's going to be in the short term. And maybe they're going to, I use the term, the minutia coming into play, and the fight will happen against Triple G, just not on May 5th, and Canelo Alvarez just not on May 5th. And maybe that will be pushed back if the other mandatories aren't going to come into play and start stripping of all these belts. So I'm not really sure. We've got to see what the Nevada State Athletic Commission is going to do about the situation with the Canelo Alvarez and a ban or suspension or whatever it might be. I still haven't heard anything solid about that as far as any time frame. And like I said, I think Triple G is not really being held hostage, but I think that he's been more than willing to try and fight on the May 5th. And for whatever reason, it's not going to happen. So I think I would just up camp and pull the plug and just wait and see what does happen.
Well, again, I think that in a way, in my opinion, I think that Triple G is being held hostage by Golden Boy. And the thing is that Canelo. And realistically, Canelo is a fighter who was caught cheating, and now the ramifications and repercussions of this seem to be hurting Triple G. Canelo's the cheater, and now Triple G is missing out. All he wanted to do was maintain his schedule and fight on Cinco de Mayo like he's been training and preparing for. This is one of the main reasons why I feel that a counter stance has to take place. Triple G needs to say, all right, Canelo, you want to play games? Forget about May 5th. Nobody fights May 5th. Triple G should go and go after Billy Joe Saunders and then wrap it up, man. He does not need Canelo. I can't stand when special treatment is made, and that's what's taken place with Canelo. Even though even though he backed out of the fight and his official sentence hasn't been handed down yet, he's getting special treatment. And you watch, he's not going to get any more than a couple of month ban, and they're going to retro that back because he hasn't stepped in the ring.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to go all the way back to that. Exactly.
Yep.
So they're going to play games, Sal, and Triple G, whether his team doesn't have the juice or what, he's paying the price ultimately.
Well, and you made a good point, and I do follow that bouncing ball. And I'll tell you what, then Triple G should up camp, as I suggested earlier, and sit down with Billy Joe Saunders and maybe not make a June fight, but maybe make a realistic. Let's have one in July or August, and then and you know what? But Canelo Alvarez, he gets a 6-month ban retroactively. It's his fault, and whatever else. And if Triple G gets past Billy Joe Saunders and has every belt in the world that he can possibly have, then let him either retire, go out in the sunset, or if he wants to face or pick up round 13, so to speak, against Canelo Alvarez, then they could do that on more of Triple G's terms and not Canelo Alvarez's terms. But that really will not happen, or is unlikely to happen, because of Golden Boy.
Well, both of them are going down pretty quick, and in my opinion, Golden Boy and Canelo. Canelo already screwed up. But another thing I wanted to talk about, Jermell Charlo, not Jamal. Jamal is the one that moved. They're twins. They both look identical. And Jamal is the twin that moved up to middleweight. Both of these guys are real big. Jermell has stayed at the 154-pound weight class. He is a titleist, and it was announced yesterday that he will be fighting Austin Trout on June 9th. When I look at this fight, at first I'm saying to myself, man, Austin Trout, this guy's been around, right? I mean, he's 32 years old. He's ranked at middleweight at number 14. Now, the reason he's ranked at middleweight is because his last fight against Juan D'Angel, he won, and that was over the junior middleweight limit. So now all of a sudden he's classified on the computer as a middleweight. But prior to that, he had back-to-back losses. One against Jermall Charlo, where he lost a 12-round decision, and then his last fight against Jared Hurd, and where he couldn't continue after the 10th round. These are two big junior middleweights that he lost to. Now he's stepping in the ring against the other Charlo brother, who's just as big. Now, his last big win against a known name, a big name, I should say, was against Miguel Cotto back in 2012. But since then, Saul Alvarez beat him, Urslani Lara beat him, Jermall Charlo and Jared Hurd both beat him. At 32 years old, he seems to be become a gatekeeper. At first, I thought, oh man, Charlo hasn't fought anybody either. But I was wrong, because when I reviewed it, to tell you the truth, Jermell Charlo has fought some good fights. As a matter of fact, you got to go back to 2014 when he stepped up his level of opposition against Gabe Rosado. Since then, he's fought some pretty good opposition. Charles Bellamy, Mario Alberto Lozanzo, Vanis Martirosyan, Joam Alkline, who was older, but he stopped him. Then he got a shot at the title against John Jackson, who was only beaten twice, 20-2, won the world title, and had successful defenses against Charles Hatley and Erickson Lubin. This will actually be his third defense. The only thing is I wish that he would have fought Kell Brook. Now, he's the WBC junior middleweight champion. Austin Trout was magically placed at number 9 in the WBC, Sal. But Kell Brook is ranked at number 3 for the WBC and WBA. I think I would have much rather have seen him fight Kell Brook or even WBO number 1, Liam Smith, versus an Austin Trout whose best days are behind him.
I agree with you, and I think it would have been a lot more interest in those fights than Austin Trout, and really, I agree with you 100%.
We got a lot of stuff going on. I got Jeffrey Sussman, author of Rocky Graziano, Fist, Fame, and Fortune, a new book that came out. He's coming on in about a half hour. We got a bunch of emails to read. I want to break down some fights for this weekend. One thing that I didn't get a chance to talk about yesterday was that they announced officially the Leo Santa Cruz and Abner Mares rematch. It's taking place June 9th on Showtime. And Leo Santa Cruz at the press conference says, you all saw the first fight, and it was close. This is going to be a better fight because Mares has a different trainer. I've seen Mares improve, and he's going to come seeking revenge. This will be a good fight. See you all on the 9th. No one loves Leo Santa Cruz more than me, man. I love it. Except I hate what he does with his glove. But anyway, Abner Mares says this will be another great fight. Leo is a humble guy, but I guess I have to be the bad guy in this one. You guys saw the first fight. It was a toe-to-toe battle, and we pleased the fans. This will be a war. I'm fighting for redemption. I can say what I want, but I will win this fight. Sal, these two guys come at you. They're very entertaining. I can't wait for this rematch. What's your thoughts?
No, me too. I mean, the first fight was explosive. It was a great fight, and I don't think we're gonna miss any action less than what we can expect to see from both these combatants. I think it's gonna be a stellar fight, and may the best man win. And I can't wait to see it.
Speaking of featherweights, obviously that'll be for featherweight title. Showtime added a couple of more decent featherweight fights. On April 21st, you have Nonito Donaire going up against Carl Frampton for the interim WBO featherweight title. Then a couple weeks later in May, IBF world champion Lee Selby puts his belt on the line against Josh Warrington. So these fights are going to be broadcast on Showtime's social media platforms. So a lot of people are getting into the streaming, something that I knew was going to be the future of the sport, and I had wished that Sal would have listened to me about 5 years ago, and we would be in a different position today. But unfortunately, we're not. But in any event, hey, listen, we're going to take a short break. When I come back, there's a fight on tonight that is definitely worthwhile. There's also a fight that's taken place on Sunday in the morning. It's out of Japan that I want to talk about. But first, we'll give you the breakdowns and predictions for a fight that's taking place tonight. And another guy that we had already talked about that's going to be on that card. Unfortunately, we won't see him on TV. So we're going to take a short break. If you noticed, we're only taking 2 breaks today. One now, 1.5 hour. And that's it. A lot of stuff to cover on today's show. So don't go anywhere. We will be back in 2.
Billy C will be right back.
Broken air conditioning, $4,400. Failing refrigerator, $2,500. Don't let outrageous repair and replacement bills like these bust your budget. Get the First American Home Warranty Plan. And when a covered appliance or system breaks, we'll repair it or replace it for you.
We had a high-end dishwasher go kaput. They put it in a brand new dishwasher.
We have plans that cover air conditioning, most appliances, plus heating, plumbing, electrical systems, and much more. Plans start as low as $25 a month. Why let a major appliance or system breakdown bust your budget or go through the hassle of finding trustworthy service people? Last year alone, we saved our customers over $120 million. Don't wait until something breaks and you're stuck with a huge bill.
We save a lot of money. It's absolutely worth it.
If you don't have First American Warranty, get it.
Call 1-800-946-6234 for your free no-obligation quote. Need relief from backaches and stiffness in your hips or down your legs? Then you need Dr. Ho's Back Relief Belt. The innovative technology works to support and decompress your spine. And now it's covered by Medicare.
Every patient with back pain should be wearing this belt.
Nothing gave me instant relief except for the Dr. Ho belt.
Feel good while standing, walking, driving, doing housework, and while laying down. And now Dr. Ho's patented belt is available at our best price ever. It's even covered by Medicare. Order now and get the easy-to-use hand pump and back rehabilitation DVD free.
You know, similar belts can cost you almost $1,000, but my belts won't cost you $500, not $300, not even $200. I will give you my special TV price.
And remember, Dr. Ho's belt is covered by Medicare.
If you know a friend or family member that suffers with pain, get them my system today. Help them live with less pain, be more active, and get back to doing the things they love. Give them the gift of health.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts! Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you.
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C. Show. Glad you could be with us. Coming up in about a half hour, we got Jeffrey Sussman scheduled to join us, talk about his new book, Rocky Graziano, Fists, Fame, and Fortune. I love the book. I got to read it. So we're looking forward to have Jeff back on. If you recall, he was on several months ago with his book on Ali. So anyway, there's some fights this weekend that we're going to get to a little bit later, but there are some fights right now that are taking place. Well, not right now, but there's some fights that are going to be taking place tonight, and I will talk about the fights tonight and the ones that are taking place on Sunday morning before we get into some emails. And I got a bunch of them, so we're playing catch up here tonight on Thursday. It's Thursday, obviously. What we're going to be seeing is Francisco Vargas, the return of Francisco Vargas, going up against Rod Salika in the main event. And it ought to be a decent fight, I guess. I mean, I like Francisco Vargas big time. I mean, I'm not so sure if there's many people that don't like this guy. I mean, he's an exciting fighter, and, you know, he comes to fight. He's a fan-friendly fight. He's a former world junior lightweight champion. He's currently ranked at number 5 in that division. He's 33 years old. You know, it's funny. Yesterday we did the Blast from the Past, and we were talking about Wilfred Benitez, and he was pretty much a spent fighter when his last fight took place, and he was 32. Now we see these guys, even in the lower weight class, fighting well into their 30s. And Francisco Vargas, who's an action-packed fighter, a kill or be killed style fighter, and he's still fighting at 33. His record, 24 wins, 17 coming by knockout. He's got one loss in which he was stopped, and that only loss was against Miguel Burchard, who we saw out of California take his title away back in January of last year. He does have a couple of draws. He fought. He won his title against Takeshi Miura in 2015. But leading up to that, he fought some really good opposition. Beginning in 2013 against the Corpus Christi kid. I love this kid. And at that time, he was 18-2. Beat him, then beat Abner Cotto, who was only once beaten at the time. Abner Cotto was a up-and-coming prospect. Vargas beat him. Then he fought Juanma. Juanma Lopez knocked him out in 3 rounds in 2014. Gennaro Camargo, a veteran, stopped him. Will Tomlinson, once beaten, stopped him. He won the title, like I said, against Murara. And then he had a tough 12-round fight with Orlando Salido, in which it ended up as a draw, a majority draw. He kept his title and then lost it to Burchelt back in 2017. He did get back up on the horse and beat a quality fighter in Steven Smith. It had to go to the scorecards early because of a cut. That took place in 2017 in December, so he's kind of picking up where he left off. He steps in the ring with Rod Salika. Rod Salika's ranked at lightweight. You know, one of the big hang-ups I have, Sal, is that a lot of these young, good fighters are always fighting smaller opponents, guys that they force to move up. When I was looking at the fight for Charlo and Austin Trout, I'm noticing on the records that a lot of the guys that face both Charlo brothers are fighters that are smaller that were forced to move up in order to fight these guys. Real quickly before I get to Rod Salida, what's your thoughts on you know how I feel about things always swaying in one fighter's way all the time? What do you think about fighters that fight guys that are always a weight class smaller?
It's in the realm of the game of boxing, and the weight classes being held in increments of maybe 4 or 5 pounds separating weight classes. I don't think it's that unreasonable or that unrealistic, because you see a lot of times with those 2 increments of weight classes being as little as 5 pounds apart, some fighters choosing to go up or down and doing it for a reason of taking on a special fighter. So I'm not that opposed to it, and I think a smaller guy could always do well, and oftentimes can beat a bigger guy by a few pounds. And when you see the fighters and their techniques of getting on the scale and making those weights a day before, I said that 24 hours or a day before, a lot can happen where a fighter can put on some weight. So that's why I'm not a big fan of the strategy involved, and also what happens with a day before weigh-ins. I really feel we should go back to the same day weigh-ins, and we may see a little bit less of things like that. And surely it doesn't bother me, but I just am a big fan of the same day weigh-ins for a multitude of reasons.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have same-day weigh-ins, and I agree with you. I think that it's better for the sport. I feel that we would have more realistic weight classes. I mean, some people's body and chemical makeup gives them the ability to dry out and make a weight that when they rehydrate, they're putting on 10, 15, even 20 pounds in a 24-hour period. The end result is you're getting, guys that are like what we saw last weekend. A guy fighting in a junior middleweight division who clearly was a cruiserweight on fight night. But it goes a little deeper than just that, Sal, because my point here is that a guy that can do that, a guy that has the chemical makeup that can, lose weight, dehydrate themselves, and lose 15 or more pounds overnight, make a weigh-in, and then gain that weight back after they have a couple of glasses of water and a meal, and they're constantly seeking out other fighters that don't have that ability and are even in a smaller weight class. The end result is you're seeing them 2 and 3 weight classes above on fight night. To me, that's not challenging. The thing I love about boxing, or the way it used to be, is I like the challenge. I like to see two fighters that, you say to yourself, what you used to do years ago? You go to a live fight, and I'm sure you did this too, Sal. You go to a live fight, and you're there with a couple of buddies or whatever, and you just pick chunk colors. I'm going with the guys wearing the dark chunks tonight. I'm going with the guys in the red corner or the blue corner, or you get to flip a coin and pick a guy for each fight. And you had a chance of winning. That's not so much the case today. I cover fights all over, and in most cases, the promoters' fighters are in one corner, the opponents are in the other, and you can watch. Very rarely do the other corners win, and the odds are always stacked. And
that's why they call it the A side and the B side.
Well, they shouldn't. There shouldn't be an A side and a B side. In boxing, you're supposed to, when you got into the sport, I know it's called prize fighting and people got into it for money, but there was also a manner of, pride and like the way fighters want everything in their favor, like what's happening to Triple G now. He ends up forcing Canelo's hand to back out because Canelo's a cheater, at least this time. And now Triple G is losing out, So anyway, back to the fight, Francisco Vargas. Go ahead.
You just said something important. What you said was, yes, decades ago, it used to be, even maybe more than just a few decades ago, it used to be the rules and regulations were in place, and the fighters had to conform and abide by those rules and regulations. Today, they're tweaked, they're leveraged, they're done this, they're done. It's a different game, and it's not as comforting to know that there is some wiggle room in some of these rules, regulations, and everything else. It should be signed, set, deal, hardwired for what it was and what it should be, and that should be it.
Yeah, well, listen, you can't have knockout, drag-out fights every single time.
No,
what you can have is even fights in terms of weight class, size, etc.
Yes.
And that's what irks me. But anyways, Rod Salika, he's ranked at number 94 in the lightweight division. So, technically he's bigger than Francisco Vargas, who's 5'8", even though physically he seems way smaller. If you've seen the weigh-in pictures and stuff, he's 5'7". His record is 24 wins, 4 coming by knockout. And he's lost 4, in which he was stopped 1 time, and that was when he stepped way up in class and fought Danny Garcia. If everybody remembers the beating that Danny Garcia gave him, knocked him out in 2 rounds. Rod Salika, when you look at his 24 wins, obviously he's not a power puncher with only 4 knockouts, but every one of his 4 losses was when he stepped up in opposition. He got knocked out by Danny Garcia. He lost against Ricardo Alvarez in 2013. He also lost against Donovan Spivey back in 2012. And his other loss earlier in his career against Guillermo Sanchez. And I chuckle because I watched Guillermo Sanchez many, many times. He's a fighter out of western upstate New York. But anyway, he does have a good win against Monty Meza-Clay, which was a ranked fighter in 2014. But right now he's going to do his best to hang in there at 35 years old, fighting Francisco Vargas. I think this is a comeback, and let's get Francisco Vargas another world title shot kind of a fight. I'm picking Francisco Vargas to beat Rod Salika in a entertaining fight, because all of Vargas's fights are entertaining. Sal, who do you like in this fight?
I like Francisco Vargas as well for a multitude of reasons, and some of them that you just mentioned. I think he's a warrior. I think he's an entertaining fighter. and I think he's going to bring it to the fight. And I think Salika, as you say, he often misses those big opportunities just because of his style and his size and whatever it may be. But I think that Francisco Vargas will probably have a great night to showcase his skill and his victory against Salika. And I pick him to win, maybe even by a knockout in later rounds.
The next fight I'm going to talk about is happening Sunday on ESPN. And when I say Sunday, I wish all fights were like this. 8 a.m. I'm an early riser. I'm up at 4 a.m. every day. So 8 a.m., is perfect for me. There's a fight taking place in Japan. It will be aired on ESPN2 beginning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 a.m. if you're on the West Coast. But it's a decent fight against the current world champion, in the WBA world champion, Murata. He's going to be taking on the Italian fighter Blandamura. But one other fight that's going to be on, actually, I should have mentioned this before, a fight that's going to be on the card tonight, even though he won't be on the television, is that 6'6" junior middleweight, Sebastian Fundora. We had talked about this guy before. Fundora is 6'6", and he's a southpaw, and he's already ranked at within 200, 184 in the junior middleweight division. He is undefeated, 8-0 with 4 knockouts, and he's fighting again. It's going to be interesting to see this kid as he progresses south. 6'6" in a junior middleweight division. He's 20 years old, so we know he's going to fill out.
He's going to fill out. He's going to be easily. He's going to grow into being a light heavyweight, maybe heavyweight. Who knows? Who knows what his makeup will be? But he's not going to stay around too much longer in the junior middleweight division.
Yeah, heavyweight. I don't know. He's pretty skinny,
but he's a thin guy. Yeah. I could see him maybe as a super middleweight or light heavyweight.
Well, we'll see. He's only 20. But the longer he can stay in the lower weight class, the more advantage he's going to have. But anyway, the fight Sunday morning on ESPN2. Murata is 13-1 from Japan. He is a guy that has some Olympic background. He won a gold medal at 165 pounds in the 2012 Olympics. He's taken on European middleweight champion, who I guess had to give up his Euro title, even though he still had it in his last fight, which was June of last year. Emmanuel Blandumara from Italy. Let's start off with him. Blandumara is 38 years old. He's ranked at middleweight at number 40. He's 5'10". He's from Italy. Like I said, his last fight in 2017, he still was the Euro middleweight champion. His record is 27 wins, only 5 coming by knockout, and he's got 2 losses in which he was knocked out in both of those fights against 2 quality opponents, too. Michel Soro knocked him out in June of 2015 in the 8th round of a scheduled 12-round fight. Soro was 26 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw at the time. And the other guy who beat him in 2014 was Billy Joe Saunders. Knocked him out again, same round, 8th of the scheduled 12th round. All his other opposition are virtually unknown. He's fought his entire career with the exception of the Billy Joe Saunders fight and a couple of others where he fought in other parts of Europe. But the majority of his career has been fought in Italy. Like I said, his biggest, accomplishment in terms of titles was winning the Euro middleweight title. My paisan is stepping in, like I said, with Ryota Murata. Murata was a bit of a prodigy. I mean, this is a guy that won the Olympics, a gold medal in 2012. He's no spring chicken himself. He's 32 years old. He's the WBA regular world champion, because we all know that the real world champion for the WBA is Triple G. You look at his resume. he fought some good opposition. He's only got 14 pro fights. He's 13-1. He's fought some good opposition on his way up. I mean, from his pro debut, fighting Akira Shibata, who was 21 wins, 7 losses, and a draw when Murata turned pro in 2013. His resume is all quality opposition. Now, he got his chance to fight for the world title. It was a vacant WBA regular middleweight title in May of last year, in May of 2017 against Hassam Nadam. He lost a very close bit of a controversial decision in Japan, which was kind of strange. They set up the rematch several months later, 5 months later, almost to the day in October of last year in Tokyo, Japan. This time, he beat Hassam Nadam. Hassam Nadam couldn't continue after the 7th round. And I was watching that fight. I was on the road somewhere. I remember watching. I think it was up at Turning Stone. And I remember watching this fight because it was on early in the morning as well. And I thought Hassam Nadam was doing well. And then all of a sudden retired on a stool, giving Murata the championship. How's this fight going to go Sunday morning? I'm interested to see because I'm looking for some improvement with Murata. I know his opponent is a come-at-you kind of a guy, but his weakness is his chin. I'm picking Murata in this one as much as it hurts me to go against a fellow Paisan. What do you think, Sal?
Well, you make a good case here. I was looking at Emmanuel Blandirama. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right.
Blandimirara.
Yeah.
Blandimirara.
We'll call him Paisan.
Right.
And anyway, I think that he's going to come up short. I think Murata is going to be, this is at a point in his career. He's been pro now for, 5 years. And 14 total fights is not really an overly busy fighter. So I think he's got to get back up and be in the showcase and be in the limelight. And I think this is his opportunity to try and move forward with his career. Because as you suggested, he's not a spring chicken as well. So I'm also going to pick Murata.
So those are the two main fights that we have. It's kind of a slow weekend. A programming note: we will not be doing a live show tomorrow or Monday, so we apologize in advance for that. Let's get started with an email or two before we have to go to a break and bring Jeffrey Sussman on. First one is from my man Jesse, and his subject says Conor versus Floyd in MMA. He says, "Hey, Billy C and Sal, we should just let these arrogant, self-centered loudmouths fight each other and make their money in whatever rules they want. Basically, a super fight freak show in MMA. We got Conor saying he will be the face of boxing and he can KO anybody, but when he loses him in MMA, he says that they're too big, etc., etc. He only wants to fight stand-up in MMA with punches and kicks. He's not a wrestler and submission artist. He avoids guys who can wrestle or submit. He is his own believer in distance, timing, and combos with his punches in MMA. It takes years for Floyd to know excellent kicking and wrestling, grappling, and submission skills, so it's not realistic. Conor has been doing MMA for 10 years, and Floyd none. So why not a Floyd versus Conor in stand-up MMA, since Conor only likes to punch in MMA? Should Floyd promote his fighters since they only fight once a year?" Different topic, I guess. But listen, I could give Floyd a pass for not being allowed to take a fighter down. But to prevent, if he's going to fight in an MMA cage, he's asking not only to prevent the ground game, but he's asking to prevent kicks, elbows, anything like that. So, I mean, if he would say, okay, you can allow kicks and knees and all of that, but you can't throw a guy to the ground, no submission holds, that is a happy medium, in my opinion. But to suggest that he's going to go and fight in what he's calling an MMA fight, but yet you can't do anything that makes it MMA, is ridiculous. It's a scam. But I think that it would be more realistic and more profitable, to be honest with you, for everybody involved, if they would allow kicks of some kind. What do you think?
Well, you know what I think. I mean, this is gonna. If you leave it to Floyd Mayweather, he's gonna have a boxing match inside a cage, and we all know what's gonna happen then and there. Hey, it was easy. When you see Conor McGregor coming from the MMA world, going into a boxing ring and adhering to the boxing rules and regulations, he's out of his element. And Floyd did what he did to show just that cause, just that end. Same thing would happen if Floyd was to go into an MMA cage and abide by the rules and regulations of the MMA. He would be flipped all over like a wet tuna on a boat deck and trying to get back into the water, and the ring being his element, not the cage. And I think Conor would really just have his field day of revenge on that level. So what does Floyd have to do? He's got to negate some of the rules and regulations of the MMA and make it more of a boxing scenario inside of a cage. I don't think it's good. Can they sell it? Yeah, they could sell it because they got the gullible fans that want to see something like that, and they'll spin it, they'll sell it, and it'll happen. And but no, I think if there's going to be a crossover, one sport goes into the other goes into the other one. They got to abide by the sport they're choosing to cross over into.
Listen, if they wanted to have a rematch in boxing, just have a rematch in boxing.
That's it.
Don't say that you're going into MMA, but you can't kick, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's a joke. It's a scam. But anyway, the last and by the way, Jesse's comment about his fighters only fighting once a year. I've said this a long time ago. If Floyd was smart, which I honestly don't think he really is. I think he's made some good decisions, or somebody's advising him. And if it's him making all the decisions, then I'm totally wrong. Then he's a genius. But the truth of the matter is that I think that Floyd Mayweather could become, if he put his mind to it, the same way he puts his mind to making money, one of the best promoters out there. And I think that Floyd should focus on that. And we need a top promoter in the U.S. We need it. We don't have it. Golden Boy's not the one. Top Rank is, they're there, but it's Bob Arum. We need some new blood. Floyd Mayweather and Mayweather Promotions could be that void. They could fill that void. He's got a couple of decent fighters, but the problem with Floyd is he's got to let go of his ego first. Anyway, the last part of this email says, I saw a little of Hurd versus Lara, and Hurd, for being a pressure fighter with recklessness, he does not throw enough punches, poor defense. He's horrible technique, sloppy punches, arm punches. He really belongs in the middle of super middleweight division. His current style won't last long in those weights, especially with his lack of punches and defense. I want to see Hurd versus Charlo or Lara again. Deontay Wilder has no skills either, and yet he's undefeated. So, listen, you could say what you want about Hurd. He's a big guy. He comes at you. If he can maintain that weight, I can't see anybody in 154 pounds beating him because of his sheer size. I agree that he's not fundamentally sound. His punches are thrown kind of wild and stuff. But he beat one of the most technically sound guys in the sport of boxing in Erslandy Lara. So you got to give him credit where credit's due, I think. But in any event. Hey, Sal, we're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, we're scheduled to have Jeffrey Sussman on. We're gonna do a review on his book. Then we're gonna get you back, man, because this is our last commercial of the show, dude. So don't go anywhere. We will be back in about 2 minutes. Hey, don't go anywhere.
Billy C will be right back.
Need relief from backaches and stiffness in your hips or down your legs? Then you need Dr. Ho's Back Relief Belt. The innovative technology works to support and decompress your spine. And now it's covered by Medicare.
Every patient with back pain should be wearing this belt.
Nothing gave me instant relief except for the Dr. Ho belt.
Feel good while standing, walking, driving, doing housework, and while laying down. And now Dr. Ho's patented belt is available at our best price ever. It's even covered by Medicare. Order now and get the easy-to-use hand pump and back rehabilitation DVD free.
You know, similar belts can cost you almost $1,000, but my belts won't cost you $500, not $300, not even $200. I will give you my special TV price.
And remember, Dr. Ho's belt is covered by Medicare.
If you know a friend or family member that suffers with pain, get them my system today. Help them live with less pain, be more active, and get back to doing the things they love. Give them the gift of health.
This is important news for women using birth control medications and devices. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with a pseudotumor after using one of these birth control drugs or devices, you may be eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Contact the law firm of Davis & Crump right now if you or a loved one have used one of these birth control medications or devices and were diagnosed with a pseudotumor to see if you are eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Call now. Operators are standing by.
Hologram USA presents a proposal to all investors. Hologram USA is an innovative three-dimensional patented technology that shifted the paradigm in media technology. Our patented hologram technology that brought you Tupac and Coachella, Whitney Houston, Billie Holiday, and many more is integrating live performances to bring your favorite past and present entertainers beyond your imagination. Invest in the patented technology before the banks scoop up all the stock. Invest in Hologram USA today. Hologram USA Flagship Theater, located on Hollywood Boulevard's Walk of Fame, is the first of many to come. Call now to be part of the explosive growth. Pick up the phone. Dial the number on your screen now. Invest in Hologram USA today. Call the number on your screen right now to learn about this investment opportunity.
Call 800-624-1673. 800-624-1673.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the...
Now back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C., the only radio host man enough to take a punch from Mike Tyson.
Wait a minute, man. Hold on there. Jeremy, man, I need you to take this one, all right?
Wait, what? No way. I can't do this.
Need I remind you I'm Billy C., damn it? Now put on that mustache and get in there.
Hey, look at me. I'm Billy C. Crap.
The undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. It's Talkin' Boxing with Billy C.
Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C. Show. Glad you could be with us today, and we got a busy show scheduled for today going on right now, covering a lot of topics. And right now, there's a new book out. It's called Rocky Graziano, Fists, Fame, and Fortune. And Jeffrey Sussman is the author. And Mr. Sussman is joining us right now. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Billy. Nice to see you.
How you doing, my man? Another great book that you put out. Tell us what made you do this one. I know you were personally a big fan of Rocky Graziano, right? Was that the main reason why you wrote this book?
Yeah, I had loved Rocky Graziano ever since I was about 12 years old when I had read Somebody Up There Likes Me. I was very taken by the book, and actually I even got to meet him once when I was, I guess, in my early 20s. When I was coming home from work, he lived in a section of Queens at that time called Forest Hills, and I was coming out of the subway, and I saw this guy walking a little white poodle, and I recognized him, and I went up to him, told him how much I liked him and admired him. He thanked me very much, said he had to get the dog upstairs because if he didn't feed the dog pretty soon, the dog would take a bite out of his ankle.
Listen, you got some really bad feedback going on. I don't know what it is, but hopefully we can keep going here. But Jeff, you know, one of the things that I enjoyed about the book was the fact that you seem to uncover. I thought I knew everything about Rocky Graziano because, like you, he was a big favorite of mine. Not only was he an exciting fighter inside the ring, but he was a character outside the ring, something that we're lacking today. But your book kind of opened my eyes to some things that I didn't know, which was a surprise because I thought I knew it all about this guy. Was that what you set out to do? Did you try to write a book about Rocky that no one else was able to have that information, or did you kind of uncover it along the way?
I think I uncovered it along the way. I didn't go into it with any preconceived notion of what kind of person Rocky was. You know, I knew that I liked him. I had watched a lot of his fights on YouTube. I felt a real affection for the guy. But as I went along doing my research, I uncovered things that I didn't know before, and I found it very interesting.
Well, what was your favorite fact that you uncovered? Tell me what you enjoyed the most. Because I know there was a couple that I did for sure.
Well, I enjoyed learning more about his encounters with Tony Zale, which was so important to him. I was also interested in his relationship with his manager, Irving Cohn, and how Irving Cohn became a substitute father for him and guided his career with a great deal of patience and understanding, as did Whitey Bimstein, his trainer, and later on Al Silvani as well. He was very fortunate to be surrounded by these three men who contributed enormously to the success of his career.
You know, I knew that he had a rocky relationship with his father, but I never realized the extent of it till I read your book. That had to be really hard on a young Rocky Graziano.
Absolutely. I think a lot of the anger that Rocky felt came from the abuse that he suffered as a little boy from his father. His father was a failed boxer, and he took it out on Rocky. You know, he when Rocky was just 4, 5, and 6 years old, he'd put boxing gloves on him, and then put boxing gloves on Rocky's older brother, who was 4 years older than Rocky, and get the two kids to fight. And because his older brother was bigger and stronger, he was always beating up Rocky, and the father encouraged that. Rocky had a lot of anger towards both his father and his older brother, and he dealt with his older brother years later. He beat up his older brother when he was a teenager.
What about the Jake? There's always discussion about the Jake LaMotta fight that never happened. Can you give us some insight of some reasons why it didn't? I know there was an injury at one point, but was there any insight of why it never happened? Was there anything that we don't know?
I think these two guys really liked each other very much. They met in reform school, and they became very close friends. There was also a significant weight difference between the two of them, and I think Irving Cohn felt that it really wouldn't be a great match for Rocky. He thought that these two men were real brawlers. Both of them had a similar style of fighting, and they just would have beaten each other to a pulp, and Irving didn't see any value in going forward with that.
But they did come close to making it, right?
They did, and then it just never happened.
You know, one other thing about Rocky that I always admired, I mean, you know, by the standards in which he fought in his era, he made good money in the ring. But Rocky was extremely successful outside of the ring. Tell us about that and how, how he took advantage of that popularity.
Well, after his boxing career ended, he did a regular TV show with a comedian named Henny Youngman. It was called The Henny and Rocky Show. And Rocky played a straight man to Henny Youngman. And Rocky would ask a question, and Henny Youngman would answer it with a joke. So, for example, one time, Henny said to Rocky, "A good friend of mine just came back from the doctor." And Rocky said, "And what happened?" And Henny said, "Well, he was told that he only had 6 months to live." And Rocky said, "Gee, that's terrible." "And then what happened?" "Well, the doctor gave him a bill." "Oh, and what happened after that?" "Well, my friend said he couldn't pay the bill, so the doctor gave him another 6 months to live." So they would do kind of these kinds of jokes back and forth, and it was always after the Friday night fights usually. And the show would last for anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour, depending on when the fight ended. You know, Henny Youngman wanted to go out on the road a lot, so eventually the show came to an end. But then a man named Nat Hiken, who was a developer and creator of a lot of very successful TV shows, decided that he was going to produce a show for a comedian named Martha Raye. and he was sitting around with one of the producers and the advertising agency that supported the show, and they were saying that Martha Ray needed a boyfriend. They needed somebody who was sort of dumb, couldn't talk too well, somebody like Rocky Graziano. And then someone said, hey, well, why don't we get Rocky Graziano? And Nat Hiken went down to Stillman's gym and met Rocky and said to him, do you have an agent? And Rocky said, I don't have an agent, but I have a friggin' manager who's over there. You want to talk to him? So Nat Hiken and Irving spoke, and then they spoke with Rocky, and they offered Rocky a regular part as Martha Ray's boyfriend on the show. He would be known as the Goomba. And people loved him. He was so popular and became such an integral part of the show that after just a few months, they doubled his salary. And it helped to make Rocky into a big star on television. He became so popular that he wound up doing 3,000 TV commercials, and he said that he probably made more money from doing TV commercials and guest appearances on television and in movies than he had as a boxer.
Yeah, no, I knew that. You know, one of the funny things that I always remembered about him was, you know, his criminal background was well documented, the service, AWOL, all of those things. But I think it was after his boxing career when, you know, he was asked about it once again. He says, you know, I only stole things that began with an A, you know, a car, a car, a truck, a house, you know, whatever. And he had that kind of Bowery boys, you know, like he would have fit right in with Slip Mahoney and Satchmo, you know. But he did a lot of commercials. Didn't he do Meineke? Was he a Meineke guy?
I think he did Meineke, and he also did the Lee Miles transmission, but his biggest one was the Post Raisin Bran cereal. He became the actual spokesperson for that cereal, and he did a whole bunch of different commercials for them where he played different characters, a sailor, a tugboat captain, an explorer, a soldier, all kinds of things, and he usually played off against one little kid or a group of little kids.
Yeah. Now, when he passed, I remember it had all the headlines in the New York papers. He was battling an illness, right? But he still kind of died suddenly in a way, even though everybody knew he was sick, right? Tell us about his death.
He had congestive heart failure, and he had been battling it for a long time. I went to his funeral service at St. Patrick's Cathedral, and there must have been 1,000 people there. That's how beloved Rocky was. People just adored this guy, and they showed their appreciation and their respect and their affection for him by this enormous turnout for his funeral.
You know, Jeff, one of the things that I said it in the beginning of this interview, and I feel very strongly about it. You know, even though we're in a resurgence of the sport of boxing right now, and it's been going on now for, you know, I would say you can make the argument for 2 years now. One of the things that we are lacking is characters, just like Rocky Graziano. Do you think that type of character, and I'm not saying a copycat of him, but just somebody that, you know, fans can relate to, do you think that is extinct in the sport of boxing, or do you think that we could see another popular character come back at some point in time?
I certainly think the door is open for somebody like Rocky or another character to come forward and really dominate the sport and attract people. You know, the people at Madison Square Garden said nobody filled every seat in the Garden like Rocky Graziano. When his name appeared on a fight schedule there, every single ticket for the Garden was sold.
And one last thing I wanted to have you give us a chance to put into some light. You know, he was very honest about the Fox situation. Tell us about that. I mean, was that something that you uncovered that he was kind of battling himself over before he came forward with that, or was forced to? What was there anything behind the scenes with that whole situation?
Wait, I'm sorry, which one was that?
This was, you know, when he went in front of the council.
Oh, what happened is some mob guys had offered Rocky a big bribe to take a dive against someone named Cowboy Shank, who was really a fifth-rate fighter. And Rocky realized that if he took a dive against this guy, his career would probably end. and if he refused the mob, they might wind up killing him. So he developed a back injury, and the fight never happened. He didn't have to lose, he didn't have to win, he just didn't fight. So it was his way of avoiding that. However, the New York State Athletic Commission had a rule that if anyone tried to bribe you, you had to report it to them. And Rocky didn't report it to them. You know, he grew up in a neighborhood and with people who believed that ratting on anyone, even ratting on your enemy, was a sin. It wasn't something that you would do. And Rocky accepted those rules in life, and he saw no point in talking about being offered a bribe since he didn't take it. However, the Athletic Commission didn't see it that way, and they revoked his license, and he couldn't fight in New York. New York was his hometown. New York was where he was beloved. New York is the city where he was born and bred him, and where he learned to box. So it was a shame that they took away his right to box. And he really didn't do anything wrong.
That was when he ended up having to go to Chicago for the world title fight, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Jeff, where can people get a copy of your book?
Rocky Graziano, Fist, Fame, and Fortune. You can get it at Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com or any other online bookseller.
Jeff, it was a great read, and look, what do you got on tap? You're going to fill us in? Last time we had you on with the Ali book, you told us that you were working on something else. I'm sure you got something else up your sleeve coming soon, too. What am I going to read next?
I have a new book that I'm working on right now. It should come out in about a year, and I'll let you know when it comes out. I'll give you an advance warning, and as a matter of fact, I'll have my publisher send you a copy of the manuscript well before it's published.
Sounds good, my man. Jeff, thank you for coming on. Good luck with the book. I personally loved it, and we look forward to having you on again. All right, my man?
Thank you very much, Billy. It's always a pleasure being on your program.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, my friend.
Same to you.
That's Jeffrey Sussman, and here's a copy of the book. I'm looking at it right now, and I'm showing you guys it right now. You can get a copy of it on Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Great read. I love this book. I got a chance to read it before it came out, and I'll tell you something. If you're a Rocky Graziano fan like me, you're going to learn some things in this book that you never heard before. And like I said, I wasn't kidding. I thought I knew it all about Rocky Graziano until I read this book. That's one thing I've learned about my man Jeffrey Sussman. When he writes a book, it's definitely 100% complete. So make sure you get yourself a copy of that and tell him that Billy C sent you to get a copy of that. Yeah. Just tell him that. But in any event, we got some more stuff going on, and we're going to get my man Sal Rocky Senecola back on the line here in a second. We want to keep moving. I got some emails that we're going to read, and Jeff's sound was echoing a little bit in my headset, but some of the guys were telling me in the chat room that it was okay. But anyway, my man Sal is back with us, and Sal, I know you were a big fan of Rocky Graziano, and you know the thing is I gotta plug myself. You know I am in. They included me in this book. If you get a copy of this book, on the back you'll see a comment that I made that they put on the cover. It's not the whole comment, but the whole comment was released in a press release. But if you see this book, you'll see my name. And what I say right here, I'll quote myself. It says, Sussman tells Graziano's story like no other ever written. I learned things about Rocky I never knew before. This book is a must-read for all, not just for boxing fans. Sal, what did you think of Rocky Graziano?
I loved Rocky. I mean, growing up and watching Paul Newman do the movie about Rocky Graziano's life, and Somebody Up There Likes Me, I was an instant fan. And I, tried to. My father got me all the old 8mm film that was available with Rocky, and that was really a really neat influence on my wanting to be a boxer. My father would bring home reels and reels of Jake LaMotta, Henry Armstrong, Rocky Graziano, Rocky Marciano. But I was a big Rocky Graziano fan, and then I had my early times having the opportunity to meet him in Gleason's gym, and then he came to my first couple of fights, and it was at my fourth pro fight where he came into my dressing room after the fight. I think I had a knockout, and he said, "Sal, you know, I've been watching you. You fight like me. You look like me. You're a good fighter. You could be champ one day, but I don't get it. You're the only fighter that doesn't have a ring name. Only Italian fighter doesn't have a ring name. Why don't you have a ring name?" I said, "Well, Rocky, you know, I haven't really thought about it much." And at that very moment, he says, "Well, I'll tell you what. I want you to start using my name. I want you to call yourself Rocky. And when you do that, you're going to find it's going to bring you all the luck in the world, and maybe one day you'll be champ. But I want you to be Rocky Senacola." And you know what? It hit me. And I said, "Rocky." I mean, I was shaking. I was shivering. I was smiling. I was elated. I said, "Man, I'll be honored, and I hope I do it justice." And he said, "Kid, you got what it takes. You'll do it justice." And, you know, so from that point on, you know, I was introduced as Sal Rocky Senacola. I didn't want to disrespect my father. You know, I'm a Sal Senacola. My father was a Sal Senacola. So I wanted to, on one hand, call myself Rocky Senacola, but, you know, I couldn't give up my my birth name of Sal. So we slipped Rocky in there, and that was it. And boy, I'll tell you, I met with Rocky several times after that. And but one of my glorious afternoons, I was a guest of Al Certo. When Al Certo took the reins over after Customato passed, and I think he started handling Mustafa Hamsho. And I think it was one of the fights against Marvin Hagler. So Al Certo invited me at the time, and I was looking to have Al Certo take over my career after I left Richie Giacchetti and Sylvester Stallone with that contract situation. And Al Certo had a great luncheon, and you know, Rocky was there, and so Rocky and I would talk, and we'd have a great time, and a lot of pictures of that. But who else was in that luncheon was unbelievable. Jake LaMotta was there, and who else was there? Tony, who was there? Gennaro. There was a couple other champs there. It was just a fantastic day we spent at a restaurant, and I think it was Mustafa Hamsho Syrian restaurant that they were promoting, and it was before he fought Hagler, and it was a great afternoon, and I'll never forget Al Certo chiming in. You know, Rocky was talking to Jake and Tony. Let's see, who was there?
Canzanori.
Tony Canzanori was there, and it was a great afternoon. And these guys are talking, "Hey, how many times you been married?" "I've been married 6 times. What happened to you first?" "Well, she ate a bad egg." You know, they were going back and forth. Then all of a sudden, Al Certo chimes in. He goes, "You know, between listening to the three of you, I think we need an interpreter." You know, it was just a hilarious afternoon, just a great afternoon. And it's obviously an afternoon I'll never forget amongst 3 world champions. It was just I was in my ring, my element, my environment, and it was fantastic. I'll never forget that.
We got some more emails to read. This next one is from Joel, and Joel says, "Hey, Billy C, on the undercard of this Friday's PBC card on FS1, a 20-year-old prospect, 8-0 Sebastian Fundora, will be fighting. He's 6'6" and makes 154 pounds. Absolutely crazy. Have you heard about him or know him? Is he a good prospect? Hopefully he can go far in his career and has time to learn since he's very young." Yeah, we had just, not only did I talk about him today, Joel, but we also had brought him up in the past. I think it was right after his 8th win. He caught my eye because of his size and weight class. So it's going to be interesting to see how he progresses. This next email is from Rick, my man Rick. His subject says, "Mayweather fans will always support him." He says, "Hey, Billy C and Sal, I've really enjoyed your show the other day, and I had an email in response to your question of why Mayweather's fans will always support him. I have no doubt that there's a racial aspect involved, but for me, that has nothing to do with it. I agree with everything you said about Mayweather stacking the deck in his favor, but there's something you media guys have never figured out. I love when people tell me something that I don't know. You know, like the funny thing is, oh, Bill, you got to understand, they're doing it for this and that. It's not that I don't get it. I try to speak for what I don't like from a purist standpoint. It's not that I don't understand the business. I think I've picked up something in almost 37 years in the business. So, but anyway, he says, much like CNN goes out of their way to bash President Trump at every opportunity and never acknowledge anything positive he does, the boxing media has been doing the same to Mayweather for years. In particular, guys like Larry Merchant and Max Kellerman were at the forefront, and I lost so much respect for them to the point I can't stand listening to them anymore. Same thing goes for Ring Magazine, which I stopped reading after 15 years of buying subscriptions. Hey, for that, I just want to comment. I used to subscribe to Ring Magazine. I have a room full of magazines, but I stopped subscribing once Golden Boy bought it because the reason is it's not the same. It's all Golden Boy. And not only that, but Ring Magazine, and Sal, I'm sure you can agree with me, when we were younger, Ring Magazine was it. You couldn't wait for the new issue to come out so that you could find out what was going on, who won, who fought worldwide. Now everything's at our fingertips. What started the Ring Magazine slide for me was when I started getting issues in May, and I'm getting September's issue in May, and it's showing me fights that happened 2 months ago, so it was like, this is all old news. The internet kind of put magazines like that out of business. What would you think on that?
Well, like you said, I grew up with Ring Magazine and the Ring record book. I'm in it, and I used to watch my progress there and what they would record. And Ring Magazine, I was in and had the ratings in there, domestically, internationally, world rankings, and it was right there at my fingertips. I remember looking at the rankings and I want to fight this guy, I want to fight that guy, and it was great. It was but as you suggested, once the world media became something on the internet, and there were other vessels. I think, Ring Magazine had other magazines trying to come up and compete with them, like Boxing World, this one, that one. And they were all unique and pretty good, too. I used to get all of them. But as you suggested, I started wondering and guessing, well, how come I'm looking at things that happen, or they're calling it the September issue, I'm picking it up in April, and these fights already just like you said. It was an after-the-fact story, and media took way, and social media and other things, and made them, I think, less profitable and also less valuable because, especially today, we can get instant results, instant things. We don't have to wait for a publication. But it was the
Bible of boxing.
Magazine was once known as the Bible of boxing.
Right. Okay, so let's see, where was I? Okay, the end result is it backfires for a lot of people. It makes them even bigger fans for Mayweather or Trump, for that matter, or whoever. Barry Bonds is another good example. It also makes the media seem biased and less credible. With Mayweather, I used to be a fan early on, but started rooting against him around the time he fought Arturo Gatti because I thought he was disrespectful to Gatti for no reason leading up to the fight. But with the emergence of Manny Pacquiao and the blind ass kissing from people with media platforms, I was really turned off, especially when they felt the need to discredit Mayweather in order to pump up Pacquiao. I just want to stop for 1 second. The difference between Pacquiao and Mayweather is really only one. Manny Pacquiao's fights were more exciting than Mayweather's. The problem with Mayweather is he chose to take a route that was not exciting. So although he was successful in the ring, wins and losses wise, and of course in his bank account, he wasn't an exciting fighter. But every time he would promise that this is going to be the time I'm going to be exciting, and everybody bought it, hook, line, and sinker. That is what I think is one of the main reasons why all of a sudden you had that division between Mayweather fans and Pacquiao fans. And they were both similar. Like I say, Boston Red Sox and New York Yankee fans hate each other. but they're the same fan rooting for different teams. It's the same as Mayweather and Pacquiao, in my opinion, anyway. He says, I think Pac's 8th Division World title against Margarito was one of the biggest jokes I've seen in my life. He says Mayweather actually fought a real 154-pounder in Canelo, but didn't get any credit that Pacquiao got for fighting a washed-up Margarito at a catchweight. First of all, he wasn't washed up at the time, and Mayweather avoided Margarito. Margarito was the guy at welterweight, and Floyd chose Carlos Baldomir. That's what gave him all kinds of slack. And the other thing is the way Pacquiao destroyed Antonio Margarito. Floyd would have beat Margarito too because Margarito was slow and methodical, but Floyd didn't want to take that risk. That's what I think a lot of people disliked about Floyd. I know that was one of my issues. And as far as fighting Canelo, Mayweather did fight Canelo at 154, and give credit where credit's due. He beat a young Canelo, but that version of Canelo is totally different than the version we see today. And the one thing that I have always said about Canelo, Floyd saw, and that's why he knew that he was going to beat Canelo. Canelo couldn't beat Floyd because of Floyd's mobility. Floyd was able to hit him 2 or 3 times and get out of harm's way. Canelo has to plant his feet before he can let his hands go, and the end result is Floyd's victory there. Even though I think one judge gave it to Canelo. But anyway, he says, while all this is happening, I just became a bigger Mayweather fan. No one can seem to report on him objectively. Carlos Monzon killed his wife, but no one ever refers to him as a woman killer. As far as Mayweather fighting in the UFC, I agree with everything you said, Billy. But if the fight got made, I wouldn't think any less of Mayweather's legacy. I wasn't a fan of his 50th boxing win, but if somebody can make that much money for a sham fight, more power to him. I guess that pretty much sums it up. There. I mean that sums it up. I mean, right, Sal? I mean, if Floyd can scam people and do shams and they still shell out the money, more power to him, right?
Hey, why not? It worked for him one time.
Well, it's worked for about the last decade of his career. But anyway, thanks for the email, Rick. You know how I feel. This next one is from our buddy, Matt, out of Buffalo. He says, hey, Billy C., I was very surprised yesterday at the show's opening regarding Joshua and Wilder negotiations. The flat rate offer was, in my opinion, a complete joke, or at best, a starting point for a negotiation. I know in reading this email, you're likely going to interject disagreement at this point, but I want to outline... No, and I'll read it all before I disagree with you, Matt. But at this point, I want to outline regardless. In Joshua versus Parker negotiations, a similar offer was extended to Parker for around $6 million. Negotiations followed, and Parker earned much, much more, despite less than his initial starting point of a 50% split. In my line of work, negotiations over salary are fierce, and I can never disrespect a man fighting the ultimate contest for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world, seeking his fair share. The pay, regardless, will be higher than his previous fights, but the game requires a great dance partners to be great. As you have stated, Deontay Wilder has already conceded the location and majority share of the purse. Hearns being smart either way with the leverage and will get Wilder down to a smaller purse, or simply the fight won't happen and cash on to Povetkin. To quote Hyman Roth, gentlemen, this is a business that we have chosen. I suppose that is our place as fans of this sport. In any case, I'm very surprised at the cult of Anthony Joshua, which has emerged in our sports circles. I have followed Joshua since his early days, and I do like him, but I think his emergence as a star and subsequent actions has hampered his popularity a bit for me. He hasn't become a diva yet, but I can begin to see shades. I will state a simple prediction in a fabled Wilder versus Joshua bout, and hope Sal can weigh in from a fighter's perspective. In watching Joshua, I see a lack of head movement and overall stiffness. Paulie Malignaggi specifically noted this in his analysis. My father, in the lead-up to the Klitschko fight, opined that the legend would give Joshua fits due to movement and his skill. In that Klitschko fight, the most noteworthy exchange was a heavy-handed 1-2, which knocked Joshua down. In the Parker fight, my father and I also noted movement negating Joshua's uppercut and exchanges where Parker appeared to hurt Joshua. I believe that Wilder matches up very well to Joshua on the basis of his punch, his height, and unorthodox movement. I also feel Wilder has the X factor of a chip on his shoulder. I take Wilder to become the undisputed champion. To separate us from Mayweather and Joshua topics, I wanted to pose a question for you and Sal. With both fighters fighting in June and a lack of opponents for Top Rank, what are the odds of a year-end fight between Crawford and Errol Spence? Well, before I answer that, do you want to answer Matt's question about the styles from a fight perspective? Do you notice lack of head movement in Joshua, et cetera, all these things he said?
I do notice some flaws or some points in Joshua that, like I said, he's going to have to pick it up a notch and start doing some things. And I will tell you right now, Bill, it's just the X factor. I predict and I see if Anthony Joshua is going to get in the ring with Deontay Wilder, I'm going to pick Deontay Wilder and knocking him out. I'm not sure if it's early or late, but I just see that glooming right hand coming over the top and catching Anthony Joshua and putting some serious hurt on him. And like I said, we'll have to wait to see if that happens. But I agree with Matt's email on that level. And I think Anthony Joshua is great. I think he's a phenomenal fighter. I think he's one of the best out there. But unfortunately, as we say, he's still developing. He's not, I don't think, reached his peak just yet. And it's no fault of his own. He's king of the game. He's a big man, and he's got some great power. But I just see some flaws, and I see that Anthony Joshua may be on the receiving end of one of those looming right hands that Deontay Wilder is going to throw.
Could be.
And I think that's it.
He could be. As far as the possibility of a Terence Crawford against Errol Spence, I certainly see that. Terence Crawford is a guy that ducks no one. The funny thing about Terence Crawford, and I was in this conversation with somebody the other day about this. They were telling me, who's he ever beat? Who did Crawford ever beat? He's never beat anybody. I'm like, what are you talking about? Who did he ever beat? Terence Crawford was a guy that was brought in as the opponent at first. When we first saw him on TV, he was brought in as the opponent. Who did he fight? Not Kenny Rogers. Anyway, he was brought in as the opponent. And 3 times in a row, he was brought in as the B-side. And 3 times in a row, he won. And all of a sudden, they were like, oh, well, maybe this is the guy. And then he became the A-side fighter. Terence Crawford is a quality fighter. This guy, he feels he pulls a Mayweather type for the first couple of rounds where he feels out his opponent. But unlike Mayweather, he goes in for the kill. He's not afraid to engage. He's an exciting fighter after the first few rounds. And quite honestly, I enjoy watching him scope out his opponent. And Errol Spence is almost identical to him. Errol Spence is a guy that does the same kind of stuff. He's young. He's brash. He feels out his opponent in a little bit. Then he goes in for the kill. He's not afraid to engage. These two guys would make a great fight. And I got news for you. I would like to see it. Now, whether or not it happens at the end of this year, I don't know. The problem with the sport today is the unwillingness of promoters to work with each other, or the ego part of who's the A side, who's the B side, who gets to call the shots, who's the main promoter, who's this, who's that. There's so many other underlying issues that prevent a lot of fights from happening. But as far as on paper, Sal, Terence Crawford against Errol Spence Jr. would be a great fight to watch.
Be a great fight to watch. It'd be a heck of a fight. But I will pick Errol Spence Jr. If that happens.
I don't know.
Off the top. That's just me off the top, not even looking at both fighters right now and their training and everything else going into the camps and what we may hear. On black and white paper, for me, I see Errol Spence beating Terrence Crawford.
They'll have to fight.
That's
I love Errol Spence.
It's just an opinion.
No.
It's opinion.
Listen, it's okay. I mean, that's a tough one to pick. That's a true 50-50.
It's a tough one to pick, but I see Errol Spence beating Terrence Crawford.
The only thing is I don't have a pick yet, and I'll tell you why. Terrence Crawford has the better resume right now, in my opinion, even though it's in a lower weight class. He's fought the better opposition. Errol Spence, unfortunately, doesn't have the willing dance partners. Keith Thurman keeps getting these injuries and stuff like that. Now, Errol Spence did go and beat a quality fighter in Kell Brook, but Kell Brook, had his orbital bone broken by Triple G, then had his other side of his orbital bone broken by Errol Spence, which caused him to stop fighting. I would like to see Errol Spence. I clearly would like to see Errol Spence fight Terrence Crawford. There's no question about it. It would be a great fight. I think it's a 50-50 fight. I honestly can't give who I think would win that fight right now. I want to see more of Errol Spence at a higher level. I want to see him fight some top guys. The problem is the top guys won't fight him. So I don't know. You know what? I love the fight. I love the fight, Sal. I love it.
I love the fight too, and you know what? Maybe I'm very high on Errol Spence, but I see things that he possesses that makes me make these judgment calls. I see Errol Spence beating Keith Thurman. I think Errol Spence is one of the best out there today in his weight division.
You could beat Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman has got something to hide right now.
I like to come back. I'll come back with my injured shoulder and all.
Keith Thurman's got something to hide. That's why he keeps injuring himself somehow. But listen, just keep one thing in perspective.
Yeah.
You can always look at a fighter and say, "Oh, I like what he does. He does this well. He uses his jab, but he's got movement. He's got this. He's got that." But we have to look at who they're fighting. And we say this all the time. And I'm not suggesting Errol Spence has not fought anybody good. I'm just saying, you got to keep it in perspective. In other words, it's like Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder has the power. That is an equalizer. That separates him and lets him, give up or let me choose a better choice of words. Lets him, get away with maybe not possessing the best footwork, et cetera, et cetera. He's got the equalizer. But, you could play devil's advocate and say, well, he's only displayed it against a top quality opponent once, and he won. And not only did he win, he came back showing heart and everything else. So his value in my eyes went up big time. But the way to get a true gauge of a fighter is to see those skills maintain with higher levels of opposition. A good example, Sal, is a fighter like Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray Leonard fought well against lower opposition and higher opposition. He had the opportunity to do that. Let's just hope that some of these young guys get that same opportunity.
Yes, I agree with you. And, getting back earlier to Matt's email, part of the incentive and part of the fire, as he would title on Deontay Wilder, is that chip. Well, I think he's got a lot of people he wants to prove wrong, and that is probably one of the added incentives of why he can get himself up off the canvas and come back and throw caution to the wind in exchange with people and come out victorious. So that's a little bit fuel for the fire too, and I see that in fighters, and I see sometimes there is that nasty streak that people have to bring out, and that's what you do in the boxing ring. Not all the time, but sometimes, and when you have it, it could be an added incentive too.
One more email. This is from my man, Mitch. Now, his subject title says, "They won't take the money because," it's a play off of my butt. I don't want to make an excuse butt clause, but he says, "I don't know if Deontay wants to fight or not. He says he does, so I'm going to take him at his word. But his team won't take the initial offer. I believe this because they leaked the money out. These are negotiations, and with a fight of this magnitude, negotiations should be kept top secret. The fact that the world knows that it was $12.5 million during the early negotiation period tells me they don't want it. Fanboys are going to turn to Deontay. fanboys are going to turn in Deontay. I don't understand that, but he says you can't fight a money battle through the media. You'll be looked at as greedy or stupid or both. He's going to be paid 6 times his highest payday. $2 million times 6 equals $12 million. Prior to Ortiz, it would have been 12 times his biggest payday. It's time for Deontay to step up and let some heads roll. If they mess this kid's opportunity up, it'll be a tragic boxing story. You can't play out a negotiation through the media. I bet 90% of the fans, including his fanboys, will say he should take the deal. It's more than fair. I agree with Mitch that they should not use the media or social media to negotiate. And unfortunately, and I was saying this yesterday to some people on social media, Deontay Wilder, whether you like him or not, has been mishandled. Deontay Wilder, nobody would know who Deontay Wilder is right now unless it was for Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder promotes himself. Now, I don't like the antics of pounding your chest and yelling and screaming and saying you want to kill somebody in the ring, you really want to kill somebody, all of that. I hate it. I think it's detrimental to the sport, and I think it makes him look like a complete fool, ghetto type of an individual. Whether he is or not, I don't know. You know, I think what I see him and the video and pictures I've seen with his daughter, he looks like a regular loving father to me, okay? But unfortunately for Deontay Wilder, his loyalty is hurting himself. He has stayed with those guys that are ripping him off. Those guys, who are they? Al Heyman, Shelley Finkel, Lou DiBella. Those guys are ripping him off. They were the ones that's supposed to be promoting him, saying the things, getting the news out there, doing what they have to do. They are the ones that should be opening up their checkbooks and trying to put on a fight and make an offer to Anthony Joshua to come here to the States, but they haven't. And they are the ones that use the media to try to help their own negotiation. No, I'm sorry. The problem with Deontay Wilder isn't Deontay Wilder. It's Deontay Wilder's team. Deontay Wilder needs to really, I know his loyalty. I respect his loyalty. Nobody respects loyalty more than me. And I respect Deontay for being loyal to his team. But at some point, he's got to look in the mirror and say, what are these guys doing to me? And the truth of the matter is, let's say he does get some more money out of the deal. Great, more power to him. But let's say the other side, like Mitch is suggesting, let's say that the other thing can happen, that Anthony Joshua says, forget about it. He's got the WBA pressuring him to fight Povetkin. He's got Tyson Fury out of retirement, is going to fight a tune-up fight, then calling him out, which is a huge money fight for him in England. You know, he's got all of these opportunities to fight. He'll have IBF mandatories. He'll have all these other mandatories to fight and make all the money that he continues to make right now. All right? So, no, Anthony Joshua right now is in the driver's seat. If Deontay Wilder doesn't fight him, at least to shut him up, at least to shut Anthony Joshua up and beat him, because obviously Deontay has an opportunity to do that. The truth of the matter is can he make the kind of money that his team, in a sense, may risk him walking away from because he won't sign on a dotted line? Whether or not he's worth more or not, that's neither here nor there, because he's in a position right now where he takes a fight or he loses the fight altogether. We don't want to see this fight happen 5 years down the road. What's your thoughts, Sal?
Well, you know what I've always said. I think, you know, I think Deontay Wilder is deserving of a large port of the purse, and you know, if a 12.5 is the starting point or so, like I said, I think he should make this fight happen, not take anything less than 12.5, and just do it with the confidence you're going to knock out Anthony Joshua, and you're going to bring a rematch back to the United States where you're going to have all the leverage, where you're going to have the bargaining chip, where you're going to have the bigger percentage and bigger everything else. Just get it, put your money where your mouth is, make the fight happen, and even though you feel and we feel maybe you're worth more than $12.5 million for this fight, do what you have to do to make this fight happen, and go over there destroy your opponent like you think you can, and bring it back here, and you'll be in the driver's seat. And I just don't want to see, as you suggested, this fight fall apart because $12.5 million is not enough money for him to sign on the contract.
It's not enough?
No. For that reason. I don't want to see the fight fall apart where it's going to be because his side of the camp doesn't feel that the $12.5 million is enough money for him to sign the fight. That's all I'm saying. I think it is. Like I said, I think he should take the fight, maybe have some kind of revenue sharing of the pay-per-view on that side, but get the face value, get the 12.5, and just as a starting point there, and then basically see if there's a wiggle room there for any kind of sharing in pay-per-views or something like that. Get the fight, go over there, knock him out, and then come back here and then have yourself in the driver's seat where you can get the bigger side of the purse. Well, he's got to get this fight. He's got to take this fight. And I'm sorry if his side is going to screw it up because it's an insult because $12.5 million is not enough in their eyes. You know, the fight may never happen then, but they should really look at it as a two-fight deal where they'll have the driver's seat if they do what they think they're going to do. Win.
Well, the truth of the matter is in any negotiation, you know, you are expected to make an offer. Then somebody says, "Well, we want this," and then we come back to that. I mean, I get it. The problem in this particular situation is time. You know, time is in boxing more than time is all of our enemies, but in boxing it's even more so. You know, I was kidding earlier in the show about, you know, and Sal will back me up on this. I mean, I'm talking 4 years ago. I was telling Sal we should do this and that with an idea that I had, and streaming was a very important part of it. And we hemmed and hawed and dragged our feet and didn't do it. Well, now 4 years later, we could have been, you know, the leaders. Instead, the leaders that are on TV that are now in that business are leading, you know. So if you drag your feet and time passes, it's your biggest enemy, and it's no more evident than in the sport of boxing. But with that said, you know, the truth of the matter here, because of the importance of titles, if we were talking about Floyd Mayweather, Floyd didn't need the titles. So if there was a sanctioning body saying to Floyd, hey, if you don't fight so-and-so, we're stripping you a title, Floyd says, take your belt. Anthony Joshua has not gotten, either he hasn't gotten to that point yet, or he doesn't realize he can do that yet. And, you know, his fear of losing the belt outside of the ring is more than losing the belt, inside the ring. So the truth of the matter is that they have some leverage with Anthony Joshua. So they are against the ropes. They have to make this fight with Deontay Wilder before the negotiation period for Povetkin ends. So the truth of the matter is they both are in kind of a negative situation. I say both, meaning AJ and Deontay Wilder. Of course, Deontay Wilder's team is going to try to squeeze as much money as they can out of Deontay Wilder. Out of Anthony Joshua. But they have to keep in mind, just like Sal's been saying all along, backpad the second fight with the extra money. Take the fight now. Go get the opportunity to knock out Anthony Joshua in England, and then everything else changes. The other side of the coin is you're going to lose the opportunity to go knock out Anthony Joshua. And in this business, and especially this division, somebody else can knock out Anthony Joshua, and then Deontay Wilder is still making $2 million a fight, and he's going to fight for 6 more years before he can make that kind of money. It's a tough one. I hope they can work it out. But
me too.
Yeah, in any event. Listen, we have our trivia question. I've been asking everybody about the trivia. Let me read the trivia question to you one more time. The trivia question was, name the boxer who fought the most fights from the start of his career before being defeated by stoppage. Now, this question has been going on for a while. We started it actually on April 6th. I gave some hints. The first hint was never was a world champion. The second hint was he fought for a world title. And the third and final hint I gave was that he was a heavyweight. We finally, boys and girls, got ourselves a winner. The winner and the first person to know that the answer to this question was Johnston. My man Johnston knew
congratulations.
that the name Young Stribling was
Young
the guy.
Stribling.
Now, Young Stribling
Georgia, right?
fought, Macon County, Georgia.
Right, Georgia, Macon County, right here.
He
Oh,
fought
my God.
almost
I can't believe we talk about
1,700 rounds as a fighter. He had a record of 256 wins, 16 losses, and 17 draws. He had 289 fights. And, oh, by the way, did I forget to mention, this guy died at 28. 28! He died at 28 years old, and he had almost 300 fights up until he was 28 years old. And here's another stat for you. You know who? Wow. You know who his trainer was? His mother, Ma Stribling. You know who his manager was? His father, Pa Stribling. These guys were. His brother was a fighter too. Listen, his last fight took place on September 23rd in 1933 when he won a 10-round decision over Maxie Rosenblum, another former world champion. Okay. He died in a motorcycle accident. He got in a severe motorcycle accident after that fight. He got his foot severed, and he died due of complications in the hospital. He had at one point before he passed 107-degree fever. He got stopped, incidentally, for this question. He was stopped when he challenged Max Schmeling for his world heavyweight title and got stopped at 2 minutes and 46 seconds of the final round in a title shot. He was getting beat up, and they waved the fight off with about 15 seconds to go to get him through the end. And it was his first knockout loss, his first title shot, and it would be his last title shot. We lost Young Stribling at just 28 years old. So congratulations to Johnston. He is the winner, and I already sent him his copy of the Title Bout Championship computer game. So congratulations to him for winning that. So we got a new question, and today's new question is basically going to have the same prize on the line. I got another copy of the Title Bout Championship computer game on the line. So if you're the first one to answer this question correctly by emailing me, Billy@TalkinBoxing, that's TalkinBoxing.com, you will win your very own copy of the Title Bout Championship computer game. Here is the question. The question is, before my 20th birthday, I beat 4 world champions and lost to another one who I also defeated just 1 month past my 20th birthday. Who am I? Before my 20th birthday, I beat 4 world champions and lost to another one who I ended up defeating a month past my 20th birthday. Who am I? If you're the first one to email me the correct answer, you'll win a copy of the Title Bout Championship computer game. The email is Billy@TalkinBoxing. That's TalkinBoxing.com. Sal, Rocky Senecola, do you have a guess?
Jack Dempsey?
Great answer, but no, it was not Jack Dempsey. On this day, April 12th, in boxing history in 1997, Raul Marquez knocks out Anthony Stevens in the 9th round to win the vacant IBF junior middleweight title. It took place in Vegas. By the way, Raul Marquez, excellent ringside commentator for Showtime. On this day, is it Showtime or HBO? Wow, I forget. He's a good commentator wherever he is. On this day in 1997, Oscar De La Hoya wins a 12-round decision over Sweet Pea Whitaker to win the WBC welterweight title. Took place in Vegas. On this day in 1981, Sean O'Grady wins a 15-round decision over Hilmer Kenty to win the WBA lightweight title. Took place in Atlantic City, New Jersey, on this day in 81. On this day also in 1981, on the other side of the country, former world boxing great, former heavyweight champion and Hall of Famer Joe Louis died on this day in 1981 in Las Vegas at 66. I'll never forget
66.
Sal, it is forever etched in my mind. The last fight, I believe it was a Larry Holmes fight, or I forget the fight, but he was ringside for a fight. They wheeled him in a wheelchair to be ringside.
Have a cowboy hat on.
He had a big cowboy hat on.
Yep.
I will never forget that image, and I'm saying to myself, oh, and for years, I thought the guy was in his 80s or 90s.
I thought he was in his 80s.
When I found out that he died at 66, that image just pops in my head. But anyway.
Me too. Just did right now.
Also, on this day, we lost another great, and this guy was considered the best ever. On this day, April 12th in 1989, the best ever, Sugar Ray Robinson, former multi-division world champion and boxing Hall of Famer. He died in California on this day at 68 years old. So two great fighters historically. Both died fairly young, especially by today's standards, on this day in 1981 and 1989. Wow. Hey, man, we know we went over our time limit today, but we had a lot of stuff to talk about. We are not doing a live show tomorrow or Monday. We will be back on Tuesday, better than ever. So make sure you tune in Tuesday morning, same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Ciao, baby.